Let me ask you a question that sounds simple, but becomes uncomfortable the longer you think about it. Why does December 25th stop the world? Not just churches, not just believers. Banks close, markets slow down, flights change, cities alter their rhythm. And yet, there is a problem. No gospel mentions this date. No apostle records it. No early Christian calendar celebrates it. So how did a day that nobody could confirm become one of the most powerful dates in human history? Here's where things stop being religious and start becoming disturbing. Christmas did not survive because it was true. It survived because it solved a problem that every empire eventually faces. And once you understand that problem, you realize this story was never really about Jesus' birthday. It was about time control. And time is the hardest thing humans ever learned to organize. Stay with me, because once you see this, you won't be able to unsee it. For the first 3 centuries of Christianity, something feels wrong in retrospect. There was no Christmas, no celebration of birth, no sacred winter holiday, no December ritual. In fact, many early Christians avoided birthdays entirely. They associated them with rulers, ego, and pagan excess. What mattered wasn't birth, it was death, sacrifice, and resurrection. So the absence of Christmas is not the mystery. The mystery is this: how did a religion that avoided birthdays end up creating the most dominant birthday in human civilization? And why did this shift happen only after Christianity gained power? That timing is not a coincidence. It's a clue. To understand Christmas, you don't start in Bethlehem. You start in Rome. Because by the time December 25th enters the story, Christianity is no longer a persecuted movement hiding in houses and catacombs. It is becoming something far more dangerous. It is becoming visible. By the early 4th century, Christianity has spread across cities, armies, and administrative centers. It is diverse, fragmented, and still deeply unstable. Different regions follow different calendars. Different communities remember Jesus in different ways. Some emphasize resurrection, others emphasize prophecy. Some still argue over whether celebrating any birth is appropriate at all. And all of this is happening inside an empire that survives on one thing above all else: coordination. Empires don't collapse first from invasion. They collapse from desynchronization. Different calendars, different festivals, different rhythms of work and rest, different sacred times. Rome had learned this lesson long before Christianity ever arrived. The Roman state understood something fundamental. If you control time, you control behavior. This is why Roman power was not built only on legions and laws, but on calendars, holidays, and rituals that structured the year itself. Festivals told people when to stop working, when to gather, when to celebrate, when to obey. And in the winter, Rome already had a problem it needed to solve. December was dangerous. Winter slowed trade. Cold reduced productivity. Darkness amplified unrest. So Rome filled the end of the year with festivals designed to stabilize society. Saturnalia, the cult of Sol Invictus, celebrations of renewal, light, and rebirth. These weren't random traditions, they were psychological tools. Now place Christianity into this environment: a growing religion, a fragmented calendar, no shared winter ritual, no unified secret date. That was not sustainable. And this is where the story quietly shifts. Not with a revelation, not with a prophecy, but with administration. Historians of late antiquity point out a pattern that appears again and again in Roman governance. When Rome absorbed a system it could not eliminate, it reorganized it. Instead of banning local customs, it synchronized them. Instead of erasing meaning, it reassigned it. Instead of destroying rituals, it repurposed them. This strategy had already worked with countless provinces, gods, and traditions. Christianity was simply the largest case study. Church leaders of the 4th century were not asking what day was Jesus born. They were asking a different question entirely. How do we unify millions of people who do not experience time the same way? The answer was not theology. It was scheduling.
By aligning Christian meaning with an already powerful temporal anchor, the Church didn't invent a holiday, it inherited momentum. December 25th wasn't chosen because it was proven, it was chosen because it worked.
Here is the moment where the story quietly turns. Because once December 25th enters the calendar, something irreversible begins. At first, it feels harmless. A shared pause, a shared celebration, a shared rhythm. But then something subtle happens. People stop asking who chose the date. They only ask when it's coming. That is the first shift, and almost no one notices it. Because after one generation, the decision disappears. After two, the debate disappears. After three, even the question disappears. Only the pause remains. Now here's the unsettling part. You can argue beliefs endlessly. You can rewrite doctrines. You can reform theology. But try to remove a pause that millions of lives are built around. Try to tell workers the year will no longer stop. Try to tell families the gathering will no longer happen. Try to tell economies the slowdown no longer exists. That's when resistance appears. Not religious resistance, behavioral resistance. And behavior is harder to change than belief. This is why Christmas didn't need universal agreement to survive. It only needed repetition. Year after year, generation after generation, the same interruption in time. And here's the part most people miss completely. Calendars don't convince people. They train them. Once behavior stabilizes, meaning follows. Once meaning follows, belief feels natural. Once belief feels natural, no explanation is required, which leads to an uncomfortable realization. The success of Christmas was never about proving something happened. It was about making everyone stop at the same moment. And when that happens, something deeper forms. Shared time creates shared memory. Shared memory creates shared identity. Shared identity creates authority. That's when the date stops belonging to the Church. The Church begins belonging to the date. And now comes the point where people usually get uneasy. Because once a civilization agrees on when time becomes sacred, someone is always deciding why. And whoever defines why this moment matters doesn't need to control belief anymore. They already control rhythm. And rhythm shapes everything. This is why debates about the true birthday of Jesus never threaten Christmas. They can't. You don't dismantle a structure by correcting a detail. You dismantle it by breaking the rhythm. And breaking rhythm is one of the hardest things a society can survive. Which leads to the final, unsettling thought. Christmas didn't conquer the world by force. It didn't conquer it by argument. It conquered it by becoming unavoidable. And once you see that, the story stops being about a holiday. It becomes a lesson about how civilizations quietly decide when time belongs to power, and why, once that decision is made, almost no one remembers choosing it. So when people ask whether December 25 is the real birthday of Jesus, they are asking the wrong question. Because the date was never meant to answer history. It was meant to organize humanity. Long before GPS, long before clocks ruled cities, long before modern schedules, civilizations learned something essential. You don't rule people only by land. You rule them by time. Empires rise when they synchronize lives. They fall when rhythm collapses. December 25 did what armies could not. It created a moment everyone agreed to stop. That pause became tradition. That tradition became memory. That memory became identity. And identity is far more durable than belief. This is why Christmas survived the fall of Rome, why it crossed languages, borders, and centuries, why it reshaped economies, calendars, and families. Not because it proved something happened, but because it made something happen every year, at the exact same moment. And once that rhythm exists, it no longer needs enforcement. It enforces itself. People don't obey Christmas, they expect it. which is why removing it feels impossible, not sacrilegious, not heretical, impossible. Because by then, the date is no longer a religious claim, it is infrastructure, time infrastructure. And here's the quiet conclusion this story leads to. The most powerful ideas in history are not the ones people argue about, they're the ones people schedule their lives around. December 25 doesn't matter because of certainty. It matters because it won the long, invisible war over time. And once a civilization agrees on when time becomes sacred, everything else becomes easier to decide. Who gathers, who rests, what matters, and when. That is the real legacy of Christmas. Not a date to prove, but a moment the world learned to share, whether it remembers why or not.